Hello, my dear students. Welcome again to another session of our History E-class. Today we are going to do the second part of Industrial Revolution. Now, this realization that steam could generate tremendous power, this was very decisive to large-scale industrialization. And water, as we know, has been used over time as a source of energy. But there were various limitations depending on the area. Sometimes certain areas did not have enough water to use as a source of energy. Certain seasons there was shortage of water. And also use of water could be possible only when there was enough speed of the flow of water. Now, steam provided pressure at high temperature, and this enabled to use broad range of machinery. And this was a very viable option, and it was reliable as well as inexpensive. So, steam power was first used in the mining industries because at this time there was an ever increasing demand for coal and metal in the industries. So, steam power was a very good option here. But since flooding in the mine was a serious problem, we needed a solution. And this was provided by Thomas Savery. He built a model steam engine called the Miner's Friend, which helped him drain the mines. Then various developments kept taking place, and in 1712, another steam engine was built by Thomas Newcomen. Then James Watt is a name we all know. He invented his machine in 1769, and this was capable of providing energy to power machines in the factories. By the end of the 18th century, Watt's steam engine was beginning to replace hydraulic power. And 1840, the British steam engines were generating more than 70% of European horsepower. Now, horsepower is a term which was given by James Watt to describe the power his engine could produce. He used it to compare his engine to the actual output of how much power the horses could provide. So, after that, this term could be used. Now, James Watt produced his steam engines from Soho Foundry in Birmingham. And here he was backed by a wealthy manufacturer by the name of Matthew Boulton. So, from this foundry, he produced his steam engines. And besides this, of course, we also know that James Watt invented a chemical process for copying documents. And of course, horsepower was the unit of measurement which was given by him. Here we can take a look at how horses were being used to turn the wheels to grind metal. And this steam power helped to reduce the dependence on horsepower as well as manpower, which was used to drive these horses and do the work in these factories. Now, canals is another very important development of this time. Canals were initially built to transport coal to the cities. The bulk and weight of coal, it was difficult for it to be transported by road, and it was much slower and more expensive. So, when canals were built, of course, it was built by big landowners to increase the value of their mines, quarries, or forests. Now, after these canals were built, the price of coal fell by half because the transportation became much easier. The city of Birmingham owed its growth to the position at the heart of the canal system which connected London, Bristol Channel, and the Mersey and Humber rivers. So, the confluence of canals created marketing centers in the new towns, and that's how its location was very, very important. The Worsley Canal in 1761 was the first English canal. It was built by James Brindley. These canals built to carry coal from the coal deposits at Worsley, that was near Manchester, to the city of Manchester. And after the canal was completed, as we just mentioned, coal price fell by half. Now, because it was very profitable, more and more canals were being built, and this period is known as Canal Mania. from 1760 to 1790. So 25 new canal building projects were begun. And then from 1788 to 1796, there were 46 new canal projects which began. And that's how this craze of building more and more canals came to be known as Canal Mania. And for the next 60 years, more than 4,000 miles of canal were built. So, this canal, of course, we know was very, very helpful to transport through waterways. But another new development which was very profitable and helpful was the railways. Now, they were a new means of transportation, and this was available throughout the year because canals had again certain limitations. And there should have been enough water in the canals to move these steamships. But this railway could be used throughout the year, and it was both cheap as well as fast and could carry both passenger and goods. Now they combined two inventions, the iron track, which replaced the wooden track. That means earlier the railways used wooden tracks, of course, which were not very reliable. So it was replaced by the iron track in the 1960s and the haulage along it by the steam engine. Then steam locomotives in 1801, Richard Trevithick, he devised an engine called the Puffing Devil, and that because of the puffing sound that it made, and pulled trucks around the mine. Then in 1814, George Stephenson, he constructed a locomotive that he called the Blucher, and it could pull weight of 30 tons up a hill at 4 mph. Then in 1814, a first steam locomotive, Stephenson's Rocket, appeared. The invention of the railways took the entire process of industrialization to a second stage. Then in 1825, the first railway line connected the cities of Stockton and Darlington. 1830, the second railway line connected Liverpool and Manchester. In 1850, most of England had been connected. So, by and by, as we can see, more and more railway lines are being built, connecting important cities and towns. And by 1850s, as we just see, England had been all well connected by a network of railway. Then, just like we spoke of canal mania, we see rail mania also. The use of canals revealed several problems because the congestion of vessels, if there were more and more vessels, so it made movement very slow on certain stretches. And sometimes because of frost, flood, or drought, it could not be used as efficiently. So railways were now more convenient alternative. So between 1830 to 1850, about 6,000 miles of railway was built. Then in 1833 to 37, 1400 miles of line was built. And this was the Little Railway Mania. And between 1844 and 1847, about 9,500 miles of line was built. And it was next stage, it was called the Bigger Railway Mania. Now let's take a look, since there were a lot many inventions and inventors at this time, let's look at who these inventors were and from where they came. So, as we would believe that they were all scientists and people well trained and qualified, but taking a look at it, we realize it's not all like that. Few of them, of course, were trained scientists. Education in basic sciences like physics and chemistry was extremely limited, so everybody could not get that kind of education. Those who got, yes, some of them were trained scientists. Then inventions were made by brilliant but intuitive thinkers and persistent experimenters. Some people who may not have been really scientists, but they were intuitive thinkers and they were persistent and they continued to carry out their experiment till they were successful. Since these breakthroughs did not require actually a full knowledge like the laws of physics or chemistry on which they were based, advances could be made by people who continue to carry out their experiments by trial and error. And of course, there was a widespread thirst for knowledge. So that's how people kept on trying to find out solutions to their problems by these experiments. Dozens of scientific journals were published, and papers of scientific societies appeared in England that increased the knowledge of the people. The activities of the Society of Arts, of course, helped them, those people who were curious and you wanted to experiment. These activities of these such societies also helped. Then most inventions were the product of determination. Now, this is something very important. It was the determination of the people, their interest, their curiosity, and sometimes even luck favored them than the application of scientific knowledge. John Kay, who invented the power loom, and James Hargreaves, who invented the spinning jenny. They were familiar with the skills of weaving and carpentry, so they were familiar with that, and that's how they try to improve upon that. What was actually being done by hand loom and what was being done by individual spinning wheel. Then Richard Arkwright, he created the water frame. But he was again not a scientist, but he was actually a barber and a wig maker who tried to put his knowledge and create this water frame. Then Samuel Crompton, who invented the mule, was again not technically skilled. So what that makes us understand that to become an inventor and to invent something new, one doesn't really need to be a scientist, but one needs to be persistent and keep on trying. Then Edmund Cartwright, who again is credited with the power loom, he studied literature, medicine, and agriculture, and initially wished to become a clergyman. And he knew a little bit of mechanics. Then Thomas Avery was called the miner's friend. He was actually an army officer. Then Thomas Newcomen, who invented the steam engine, was a blacksmith and a locksmith. James Watt had some knowledge relevant to their inventions. Then there was a road builder by the name of John Metcalfe who personally surveyed surfaces for roads, planned them. He was actually blind, which is really very surprising. But yes, he, of course, put in his other skills to develop. Then there was a canal builder, James Brindley, who was almost illiterate. And he was so poor with spelling that he could never spell the word navigation, but he had tremendous powers of memory, imagination, and concentration. So it makes us understand that even certain skills are missing. There are certain others which we can accentuate and take help of them. Now, this industrialization, of course, brought in a lot of change in the lives of the people. And these changes were actually revolutionary changes, big changes that happened. Then there were, people who were talented and they wanted to use their learning to bring in change. There were people who wanted to put in their money, invest their money, and of course, they made a lot of money out of this also. And as a result of this investment and these developments, the lives of the people also changed. Some for positive, and some, of course, were negative. Like the industrialists made good money. Many people got jobs also when new things came in, but many people at the same time lost their jobs. So there were broken families also. There were new addresses. Cities degraded because of the pollution. Then conditions in the factories were not too good. Then no adequate housing, sanitation, or clean water because of the rapidly growing urban population. These facilities could not really be provided. The pace of growth could not match with the provision of facilities and infrastructure for the people. Then newcomers were forced to live in overcrowded slums in congested central areas or towns near factories. But at this time, when these people are all cluttered together at one place, the rich inhabitants who had a lot of money, they escaped this crowded area and polluted area and shifted to newer homes in the suburbs, where the air was cleaner and the water was safe to drink. So, Edward Carpenter wrote about the bad conditions of a town in his poem a manufacturing town. And in this poem, he mentions the the dull and gloomy life of the people who are living in these crowded towns. And we can take a look at this poem which I've put over here. You can go through the entire thing. I'll just tell you the main points. That the picture was looked very gloomy, and there were huge refuse heaps, the waste from these factories, and the children who are there working in these factories and picking up waste. There were houses were blackened with the smoke, and the river also had become black because of the industrial waste which flew into the which flowed into the river. And the sharp contrast that we see were the high walled gardens, the people who lived in villas, the rich people who could build walls around their houses, and inside they had beautiful gardens. And it was a sharp contrast to the life of the workers. And their face turned away from the wriggling poverty which made it rich. So that was really sad that these poor people who worked hard to make them rich, they lived a life of misery, and the rich people lived in big villas where there was cleaner air and better water. So that's something which is very, very sad about this industrial revolution. So, and here is a little ragged boy who is pensive, and he is, his dreams are shattered because of the condition of the children of that time. So this is something which I'm sure must have made a lot of impact on the people, and of course it led to lot many changes and certain acts which would give better life to these workers and the condition of the children of that time. So much for this class. Thank you and have a nice day.